Google just spent $280 million to save a building that Chicago wanted to demolish. The James R. Thompson Center, 1.2 million square feet of glass and steel sitting in the heart of downtown Chicago. For decades, it leaked. It overheated in summer. It froze in winter. The state called it a maintenance nightmare and put it up for sale. Most developers would have torn it down. But here's the part nobody talks about. This isn't just a renovation. Google is performing one of the most complex engineering overhauls in the United States right now, stripping a 17-story glass atrium down to its skeleton, replacing every single mechanical system and rebuilding it as an all-electric LEED Platinum headquarters that will house 2,000 employees by 2026. The scale is insane. The engineering challenges are unprecedented. And the stakes? They're bigger than just one building. Because if this works, Google will have proven that adaptive reuse can compete with tearing everything down and starting over. They'll have saved a postmodern icon, returned a massive property to Chicago's tax rolls, and anchored the recovery of an entire downtown district that's been hemorrhaging tenants since COVID. This is the story of how you rescue a building everyone gave up on. Scale and scope. Let me give you a sense of scale here. The Thompson Center isn't just big. It's a 1.2 million square foot glass megastructure that takes up an entire city block at 100 West Randolph Street. Picture this. A 17-story atrium wrapped in curved glass walls with office floors spiraling around the central void like a postmodern canyon. When it opened in 1985, architect Helmut Jahn designed it as a radical statement. A transparent government building where citizens could see democracy in action. The atrium was supposed to be a public plaza under glass. The curved facade was supposed to blur the line between inside and outside. But here's what Jan didn't account for. Chicago winters and summers are brutal. That massive glass envelope turned the building into a greenhouse in July and an icebox in January. The original curtain wall leaked constantly. Condensation dripped from the ceiling. Ice formed on interior surfaces. The state estimated it needed $148 million just in basic repairs to keep the building functional. By 2022, Illinois had had enough. They sold the entire complex to JRTC Holdings, a joint venture between Prime Group and Capri Investment, for $105 million. Google signed on as the anchor tenant and committed to a full transformation. The deal was simple. The state gets out from under a money pit and uses the proceeds to buy a different office building for its agencies. Google gets a global profile headquarters sitting directly on top of the busiest transit hub in Chicago. And the engineering team? They get one of the hardest jobs in the country. Strategic stakes. Now here's why this matters beyond Chicago. Post-COVID, downtown office districts across America are dying. Remote work gutted occupancy rates, companies downsized, entire blocks went dark. Chicago's Loop was no exception. Vacancy rates climbed, foot traffic collapsed, and the city faced a fiscal crisis as property tax revenues evaporated. Google's decision to go all in on the Thompson Center is a bet that downtowns can come back. But it's not just symbolic. This is a $280 million capital injection into the core of the city. And it's happening at a moment when most corporations are fleeing to the suburbs or going fully remote. The building sits directly atop the Clark/Lake CTA station, the busiest transfer complex in the entire Chicago Transit Authority network. Every day, tens of thousands of commuters pass through this hub, connecting the red, blue, green, orange, pink, and brown lines. Locating 2,000 high-paid tech workers here maximizes transit mode share, reduces car dependency, and strengthens the case for continued investment in public transportation. But here's the tension. Some Chicago aldermen and progressive activists see this differently. They argue that Google, a company with over $100 billion in net income, should be paying more in local taxes. Alderman Anthony Quezada and others have pushed for a head tax on large employers, framing Google's investment as evidence the company can afford it. The counterargument? Bringing thousands of jobs and taxable property value into a struggling district is itself a massive public benefit. Overtaxing the deal risks scaring off future employers and accelerating downtown decline. This is the political tightrope Google is walking. The engineering nightmare. All right, let's talk about the engineering because this is where it gets insane. The The Thompson Center's original design was architecturally bold but functionally disastrous. The building is essentially a gigantic glass atrium ringed by office floors. Beautiful to look at, a nightmare to operate. The problem starts with the facade. The original curtain wall system used single-pane glass with minimal thermal breaks. In a city where winter temperatures drop below zero and summer heat pushes past 95 degrees, this was a recipe for disaster. Heat gain in summer was so extreme that the HVAC system couldn't keep up. In winter, cold air infiltrated so badly that ice formed on interior surfaces. Water infiltration was constant. The building leaked from dozens of points. Condensation pooled on floors. The state spent millions on emergency repairs, but the fundamental problem was the envelope itself. It was never designed to handle Chicago's climate. So here's what Google is doing. They're stripping the entire building back to the structural frame. Demolition crews have been taking it to the skeleton, removing every piece of glass, every gasket, every piece of framing. What's left is raw steel and concrete. Then they're installing an entirely new curtain wall system. Triple pane, thermally efficient glass with advanced framing, thermal breaks, and modern gasketing designed to eliminate air and water infiltration. The new facade will drastically reduce heat gain and loss while maintaining the building's signature transparency. But here's the challenge. They have to do this while keeping the building's iconic form intact. The curved glass walls, the 17-story atrium, the postmodern aesthetic, all of that stays. They're not redesigning the building, they're re-engineering it. And it's not just the facade. Google is making the building all electric, removing every fossil fuel system and replacing them with high-efficiency heat pumps, new air handling units, modern ductwork, and a building automation system with granular zone control and demand response integration. They're targeting LEED Platinum certification, the highest level, for energy, water, and sustainability performance. This means the building will operate at a fraction of its original energy consumption while housing twice as many people. Think about that for a second. They're taking a building that was an energy disaster and turning it into one of the most efficient office buildings in the Midwest. The timeline and phasing challenge. Now let's talk about the timeline because coordinating this is a logistical nightmare. Construction officially started in May 2024 with a groundbreaking ceremony. The target completion date is late 2026. Roughly a 2.5-year construction window to completely gut and rebuild a 1.2 million square foot building in the middle of a functioning downtown. Here's how they're phasing it. Q2 2024 to Q4 2024. Early works and structural prep. Interior gutting of the former state offices, selective demolition down to the structural frame, abatement of hazardous materials, and detailed surveys of the existing steel and concrete structure. They're also starting facade removal on selected bays and prepping the atrium roof. Q4 2024 to Q4 2025, recladding and core MEP replacement. This is the heavy lift phase. Systematic removal of the old curtain wall and atrium glazing with new high-performance glass and framing installed bay by bay. At the same time, they're installing the new all-electric mechanical plant, heat pumps, air handlers, electrical risers, building automation systems. They're also roughing in new plumbing, fire protection, and low-voltage systems across all office floors. Q2 2025 to Q1 2026. Interior build-out and atrium renovation. Office fit-out on the upper floors, interior partitions, ceilings, finishes, tech infrastructure. The atrium gets new finishes, daylight control systems, public access improvements, and retail/amenity build-out. They're also finalizing the integration with the Clark/Lake CTA station and upgrading the exterior plaza. Mid to late 2026. Testing, commissioning, and occupancy. Systems commissioning for MEP, life safety, and building management systems. LEED Platinum certification process. Staged move-in of Google teams, starting with key operations and gradually filling to the full 2,000 employee capacity. But here's the complication. The building sits directly on top of the busiest CTA transfer station in Chicago. That means construction has to be carefully phased so that transit operations and passenger flows remain functional throughout. One mistake, and you shut down a critical piece of the city's infrastructure. The cost breakdown and financial reality. Let's talk money, because the numbers here tell a story. The state of Illinois sold the Thompson Center to JRTC Holdings for $105 million in 2022. That might sound like a lot, but remember, this is a 1.2 million square foot building on a full city block in downtown Chicago. By comparison, similar properties in the Loop have sold for significantly more per square foot. The reason the price was so low? The building was a liability. The state estimated it needed $148 million just in basic repairs and modernization to stay functional as a government office building. No private buyer was going to pay top dollar for a property that required an immediate 9-figure capital injection just to stop it from falling apart. Google's renovation budget is $280 million. That covers the full recladding, all-new MEP systems, interior gut and build, atrium upgrades, and site improvements. When you add the $105 million purchase price, the total project cost is $385 million. Now compare that to new construction. Building a comparable 1.2 million square foot office tower from scratch in downtown Chicago would cost somewhere between $600 million and $800 million, depending on finishes and systems. So even with the massive renovation costs, Google is saving $200 million to $400 million by choosing adaptive reuse over demolition and new construction. But here's the bigger financial story. As a state-owned building, the Thompson Center generated zero property tax revenue. Post-sale and renovation, it becomes a large private asset on the tax rolls, contributing ongoing property taxes, plus ancillary sales and income tax gains. For Chicago, this is a fiscal win. They're converting a tax-exempt liability into a taxable asset that will generate revenue for decades. For Google, this is a branding and talent play, a flagship headquarters in a global city that signals they're committed to urban cores, not suburban campuses. The controversies and what nobody talks about. But here's where it gets messy. Not everyone sees this as a win. Some Chicago aldermen and progressive activists have framed Google's investment as evidence that the company can and should pay more local taxes. Alderman Jason Irvin and others have questioned whether public benefit justifies any city concessions, arguing that a $280 million private investment doesn't directly fund services for seniors or marginalized residents. The head tax debate is the flashpoint. Critics argue that with Google's reported $100 billion in net income, the company can afford extra taxes, and that its large headquarters hints at gentrification or unequal development priorities. They see this as a giveaway to big tech, while neighborhoods on the south and west sides struggle with disinvestment. Supporters counter that bringing thousands of high-paying jobs and new taxable value into a struggling office district is itself a major public benefit. Overtaxing the deal risks scaring off future employers and accelerating the downtown death spiral that's already happening in cities like San Francisco and Seattle. Then there's the preservation controversy. Many preservationists see Google as the savior of a threatened icon. For years, the Thompson Center was on most endangered lists, and demolition was seriously contemplated. They applaud retaining the form and atrium rather than replacing it with a generic glass box. But here's the catch. Google and Prime Group have not pursued landmark designation for the building. That means there's no legal protection locking in the design. They have flexibility to make future changes, potentially even adding a new tower on top of the existing structure, something Helmut Jan's firm had sketched out before his death. Some preservation advocates are uneasy about this. Without landmark status, what's to stop a future owner from gutting the atrium or radically altering the building in 20 years? Google's response has been that they're honoring Jan's legacy by saving the building and maintaining public access to the atrium, but they're not willing to tie their hands with regulatory oversight that could limit future adaptability. This tension between preservation and flexibility, between public benefit and corporate interest, is the subtext of the entire project. Conclusion and reflection. So here's what this all comes down to. Google is betting $280 million that adaptive reuse can work at a scale most developers won't touch. They're proving that a building everyone wrote off as a failure, a leaking, energy-sucking relic of 1980s postmodernism, can be transformed into a state-of-the-art, all-electric, LEED platinum headquarters. The engineering is unprecedented, stripping a 17-story glass atrium to its skeleton and rebuilding it with triple-pane curtain walls and all-electric systems while maintaining the building's iconic form. That's not a renovation. That's a complete re-engineering of a megastructure in the middle of a functioning downtown. The timeline is aggressive. 2.5 years to gut, reclad, and rebuild 1.2 million square feet while keeping the busiest transit hub in Chicago operational. That requires military-level coordination. And the stakes are enormous. If this works, it becomes a model for how cities can save their downtowns without demolishing everything and starting over. It proves that adaptive reuse can compete with new construction on cost, performance, and sustainability. But if it fails, if the building doesn't hit its energy targets, if the costs spiral, if the public backlash over taxes and gentrification intensifies, it becomes a cautionary tale about big tech's role in urban recovery. The next 2 years will determine which story this becomes. By late 2026, Google will move 2,000 employees into a building that was once considered unsalvageable. The atrium will be open to the public. The facade will gleam with new glass. The systems will hum with electric efficiency. And Chicago will have an answer to the question every struggling downtown is asking: can we save what we have, or do we have to tear it all down and start over? Google is betting $280 million that we can save it. We'll see if they're right. We are committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more visionary builds.